Have you ever been thanked for saving someone by the same person who destroyed you? My name is Maya Hartwell. I'm 32. 3 weeks ago, my father stood on stage in front of 300 people and praised Sentinel Solutions. Whoever runs that company is a genius, he said. They've saved us from collapse. I sat in the back row, silent, because he didn't know the genius was me. The daughter he'd just mocked. The daughter he'd forced to quit college 12 years ago so my stepbrother could go to Stanford. In my purse, 2 envelopes, 1 contract termination, 1 letter revealing the truth, 30 seconds to decide. I stood up. This is the story of how the invisible daughter became impossible to ignore. The sad truth is that 97% of people watching this video aren't subscribed, not because they don't like it, but because they're too lazy to spend just 2 seconds. If you don't want to be part of that 97%, prove it right now with a like and a subscription. The remaining 3% are always the ones who go the furthest, and I bet you're one of them. It started at a gala, 300 people, designer suits, champagne, and my father standing on stage about to destroy me. Let me take you back to that night. The Bellevue Club. November, cold enough that my breath fogged. The building looked the same as every charity event I'd avoided for 12 years. Swarovski chandeliers, white marble. The kind of place where people measure worth in stock portfolios and vacation homes. I wore an emerald green dress Eleanor had given me before she died. My grandmother. The only person who ever saw me. There was a note pinned inside. For the day, you need armor. Tonight I needed armor. Patricia intercepted me at the entrance. My stepmother, 58, Botox smooth, wearing Chanel, and a smile that never reached her eyes. Maya, you came. We weren't sure you'd have anything appropriate to wear. Her gaze swept over my dress, the diamonds at my ears, the Cartier watch, all bought with money I'd earned myself. Hello, Patricia, I said, calm, professional. She leaned in. Your father's very nervous tonight. Try not to make a scene. I walked past her into the ballroom. Inside, 300 guests, laughter, clinking glasses, a string quartet. I found my seat assignment, table 18, far corner, near the service entrance. Not the family table. That was front and center, reserved for Patricia, my stepbrother Brandon, and the people who actually mattered. Across the room, my father held court near the bar. David Hartwell, 65, CEO of Hartwell Industries, manufacturing and distribution, mid-sized but profitable. Then I heard it. My company's name. Sentinel Solutions has been transformative for us, he was saying to a silver-haired executive. Whoever runs that company is a genius. Best cybersecurity consultants in the region. The man nodded. I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months. Do you know who's behind it? David shrugged. Never met them personally. But I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering results. I took a sip of champagne to hide my smile. For 3 years, my company had been the backbone of his security infrastructure. 45% of his protection against data breaches, ransomware compliance violations. Without us, Hartwell Industries was vulnerable. And he had no idea his daughter was the one protecting him. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. The MC began introductions, speeches, a video montage of David's career. Applause. Then David climbed the steps. Standing ovation. 300 people on their feet. Thank you, he said, waving them down. Please sit. 40 years in this business. It's been one hell of a ride. He thanked his partners, his employees, the board. Then came the family segment. I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible wife, Patricia. She stood dabbing her eyes, perfectly choreographed. 30 years. You're a saint. Applause. And my son Brandon, who will be taking over as CEO come January. The future of Hartwell Industries. Brandon stood, waved. The room gave him a standing ovation. Then, my father's eyes found me. Something shifted in his expression. Something mean. And of course my daughter Maya. The spotlight swung to my table. 300 pairs of eyes turned. No real career. Still figuring life out at 32. But hey, maybe someday she'll find a successful husband to take care of her. The room erupted in laughter. Cameras flashed. Someone's phone pointed at me, recording. I sat perfectly still. Didn't flinch. I just waited for the laughter to fade. Then I stood up. The room went quiet. I picked up my champagne glass. Slowly, deliberately. My father's smile faltered. I raised the glass toward him. Congratulations on your award, Dad. 40 years in business. Quite an achievement. I paused. You taught me a lot. About hard work. About sacrifice. About exactly what kind of loyalty family can expect from you. The silence was absolute. So here's to you. Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me. I set the glass down without drinking, picked up my bag, turned, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the only sound in that cavernous room. I didn't run, didn't hurry, just walked, spine straight, head high. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the night, and for the first time in 12 years, I could breathe. Let me take you back 24 years to the day everything changed. I was 8 years old when my mother died. Cancer. Quick and brutal. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I don't remember much about those final weeks. The hospital smell. The machines beeping. The way adults spoke in hushed voices like I couldn't hear them. What I remember are her hands. Soft. Always reaching for mine. Even at the end, when she could barely lift them, she'd find my fingers and squeeze. 3 times. Our code. I love you. The last thing she said to me was, "Be strong, Maya. You're stronger than you know." I didn't feel strong. I felt like the world had ended. 2 years later, my father remarried. Patricia Chen, 42, corporate lawyer turned stay-at-home mom. She came with a son from her first marriage, Brandon, 13 years old, 3 years older than me. I remember the wedding. Small ceremony in our backyard in Bellevue. Patricia wore cream. Brandon wore a suit that didn't quite fit. My father smiled more that day than he had in 2 years. I wore the dress my mother had bought for my 10th birthday. She never got to see me wear it. "This is good," my grandmother Eleanor told me at the reception. She was my father's mother, 70 at the time, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued. "Your father needs this. You need this." I nodded. "Because that's what you do when you're 10 and the adults tell you something is good for you." Within 6 months, I realized Eleanor was wrong. Patricia and Brandon didn't join our family. They became the family. And I became furniture. It wasn't dramatic. No Cinderella-style abuse. No screaming or hitting or locking me in closets. Just invisibility. The kind that's harder to point to. Harder to prove. Brandon got praised for his grades. Mine were ignored. Brandon got the new car at 16. I got his hand-me-down Honda with 120,000 miles. Brandon was the future of the company. I was also here. I remember one dinner. I was 15. Brandon was 18. About to start at the University of Washington. Brandon got accepted into the business program, my father announced. "Full ride. Scholarship." Patricia beamed. "We're so proud of you." "What about Maya?" Eleanor asked. "She was visiting for the week." "How's school going, sweetheart? I'd just gotten my SAT scores back. 1490. Top 5% nationally." "It's fine," I said. "My father didn't even look up from his steak." "That's nice." Brandon smirked. "Yeah, nice." Eleanor's jaw tightened. She saw it. The way I was being erased in my own home. After dinner, she found me on the back porch. "You remind me of myself at your age," she said, sitting beside me. "Underestimated, overlooked. But I see you, Maya. I see exactly who you are." "It doesn't matter," I said. "Dad's happy. Patricia makes him happy. That's what matters." Eleanor took my hand, squeezed 3 times. "Our code, the one my mother taught me." "It does matter," she said quietly. "And one day you're going to realize that. She left me something when she died, something no one in the family knew about. But I'm getting ahead of myself." The invisibility continued through high school, through my acceptance to the University of Washington, through my decision to major in computer science instead of business like Brandon. "Computer science," Patricia said when I told them. "That's very technical. Are you sure you wouldn't prefer something more social? Marketing maybe? Communications?" My father shrugged. "Let her do what she wants. Brandon's the one who'll be running the company anyway." There it was. Said out loud. Brandon was the heir. I was just taking up space. I told myself it didn't matter. I buried myself in coursework, aced every exam, made Dean's List 3 semesters in a row. My father came to one parent weekend in 2 years. He spent the whole time on his phone taking calls from the office, but Grandma Eleanor called every Sunday, without fail. "How are your classes? What are you learning? Tell me about your friends. Have you met anyone special?" She asked the questions my father never did. Listened to the answers he never cared about. "You're going to do great things, Maya," she'd say. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I believed her, because I had to believe someone. Then came the day everything fell apart. I was 20. Sophomore year, 3.85 GPA. I had scholarship applications on my desk for a summer program in San Francisco. Cybersecurity internship. Competitive. Life-changing. My father called. Wednesday afternoon. Family meeting. Come home this weekend. Those 2 words had never meant anything good. I drove home to Bellevue that Wednesday, with a knot in my stomach. Family meetings never meant anything good. The house looked the same, 6-bedroom colonial, 2 acres, Mercedes in the driveway, the kind of home that whispered success without shouting it. I found my father in his study, mahogany desk, leather chair, walls lined with awards and certificates. Patricia stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, united front. I knew immediately. Whatever this was, I'd already lost. "Sit down, Maya," my father said. He didn't look up from his papers. I sat. "Brandon's been accepted into Stanford's MBA program," he began. Still not looking at me. "It's an incredible opportunity. One of the top programs in the country." My stomach dropped. I already knew where this was going. "We're very proud of him," Patricia added, her voice honey-sweet. "It's a 2-year program, very prestigious." My father finally looked up. "We need to make some sacrifices as a family. We can't afford both your tuition and his program." The room tilted. "What? You'll take a break from school," he said. Matter of fact. Like he was discussing the weather. "Just for now. Brandon's degree will benefit the whole family. When he takes over the company, we'll all be better off." I sat there. Frozen. Not because I was surprised. I'd spent 12 years learning not to be surprised, but because some small, stupid part of me had still hoped. "You promised," I heard myself say. "You promised Mom before she died that you'd support my education." My father's jaw tightened. "Circumstances change, Maya. When the business stabilizes, I'll make it up to you." He never did. Patricia leaned forward, sympathetic. "A girl doesn't need an MBA to have a good life, sweetheart. You'll find a nice husband someday. That's what really matters." I looked at her, then at my father, then at the Stanford acceptance letter on his desk, with Brandon's name in bold letters. "How much does it cost?" I asked quietly. "That's not your concern," my father said. "How much?" he sighed. $70,000 a year, plus living expenses, $140,000 over 2 years. I was paying $18,000 a year at UW, in-state tuition. "So there's money," I said. "You're just choosing to spend it on Brandon." "Brandon is the future of this company," my father said, his voice hard now. "You're studying computers. That's fine. But it's not going to help Hartwell Industries." "I could help. This isn't a negotiation, Maya." The finality in his voice cut through everything. I'd never been part of the decision. I'd just been summoned to hear it. I didn't argue that day. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. I just nodded and walked out. What I found out later through a cousin's slip of the tongue at a holiday party was that there was plenty of money. The business was thriving. They'd just posted their most profitable quarter in 5 years. They didn't lack the funds. They just didn't want to spend them on me. I called Grandma Eleanor from my apartment that night. "I know," she said, before I could speak. "Your father called me, asked me not to interfere." "Did you tell him he was wrong?" I argued, until I had no words left, sweetheart. "He wouldn't listen. He never does." Her voice cracked. I realized she was crying. "What do I do?" I whispered. "You do what I should have done 50 years ago," she said. "You leave. You build something they can't touch. You prove to yourself what I already know." "What's that?" "That you don't need their permission to be extraordinary." I moved to Seattle 3 weeks later, packed everything I owned into my hand-me-down Honda, $2,000 in savings. No degree, no family support, no backup plan. The last thing I took was a photo of my mother, the one from my 8th birthday. She was laughing. I was on her lap. Her hands were around me. I could almost feel those 3 squeezes. "I love you. I'm going to make you proud," I whispered to the photo. "I'm going to make both of you proud." I taped it to my dashboard and drove west, toward the city, toward uncertainty, toward the life I'd build with my own 2 hands. This was the last time anyone would decide my worth for me. My first apartment in Seattle was 400 square feet above a laundromat in Capitol Hill. The radiator clanked all night. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's TV through the drywall. I ate ramen for dinner, and day-old bagels from the coffee shop down the street. But here's the thing about rock bottom. You can't fall any further. I got a job 3 days after I arrived. Administrative assistant at a tech startup in Pioneer Square. $22,000 a year, barely enough to cover rent and groceries. But it had benefits, health insurance, dental, a desk in an office that smelled like coffee and ambition. The owner was a man named Walter Chen, 63, Chinese-American, former Microsoft executive who'd cashed out during the dot-com boom and now ran a small software company that helped businesses optimize their data infrastructure. He had kind eyes and a blunt manner. "You're overqualified for this job," he said during my interview, looking at my partial UW transcript. 3.85 GPA. Computer science. Why aren't you still in school? Family circumstances, I said. The lie I'd practiced. He studied me for a long moment. Can you start Monday? I started Monday. For the first 6 months I did what I was hired to do. Answered phones, scheduled meetings, organized files. But I also stayed late. Watched the engineers work, asked questions, learned their systems from the ground up. Walter noticed. "You've got a brain, Maya," he told me one evening, when everyone else had gone home. "Use it." So I did. I started taking free online courses at night. MIT OpenCourseWare, cybersecurity fundamentals, network architecture, cryptography. I'd sit in my tiny apartment with my laptop, the laundromat humming below me, and teach myself what college was supposed to teach. That's where I met Jenna. Jenna Park, 21, Korean American, software engineer. She'd joined Walter's company 3 months after me. Brilliant, funny, the kind of person who could debug code in her sleep and still have energy to argue about the best coffee shops in Seattle. We bonded over late-night work sessions. "You know you're not an admin, right?" she said one night, watching me troubleshoot a security flaw the senior engineers had missed. "You're better than half the people here." "I don't have a degree," I said. "Neither did Steve Jobs." She grinned. "Degrees are just paper. Skills are what matter." We became friends, then best friends, the kind where you don't have to explain your damage because she has her own. Her parents had disowned her for dropping out of med school to pursue engineering. My family had chosen my stepbrother over me. We were both building lives from rubble. Found family, she called it. The people you choose instead of the ones you're stuck with. Walter became part of that family too. He started mentoring me. Not officially. Just small things. Explaining industry trends over coffee. Introducing me to contacts. Teaching me how to negotiate. How to read a room. How to build something sustainable instead of just profitable. "The tech industry is brutal," he said. "Especially for women. Especially for women without degrees. You're going to have to be twice as good and work 3 times as hard." "I know," I said. "Good." He nodded. "Then you'll do fine." 4 years passed. 4 years of 18-hour days. Ramen dinners. Free education. Slow, deliberate growth. I moved from admin to junior security analyst, then to senior analyst. Walter gave me more responsibility, more trust, more autonomy. By the time I was 24, I'd saved $40,000. I'd built a reputation in Seattle's small tech community. I'd become the person companies called when they needed someone who understood cybersecurity but wouldn't charge enterprise rates. Walter pulled me aside one morning. "I'm retiring next year," he said, "selling the company. But before I do, I want to make you an offer." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a check. $50,000. "Angel investment," he said. "Start your own consulting firm. I'll be your first client. You've got the skills. You've got the network. You just need the capital." I stared at the check. "Why?" "Because 30 years ago someone gave me a chance when I had nothing," he said. "Because you remind me of myself. And because I'm betting you're going to build something extraordinary." I took the investment, started the paperwork, registered the LLC, Sentinel Solutions, cybersecurity consulting, small but agile. 1 employee. Me. But I kept my name off everything. No LinkedIn profile, no press releases, no personal website. All business went through the company name and my lawyer. Jenna asked me why. "My family," I said. "If they find out I'm succeeding, they'll find a way to take credit. Or tear it down." "They don't deserve to know," she said. "Exactly." Walter understood too. "Smart," he said. "Build in silence. Let success make the noise." So I did. For 3 years I stayed invisible. Built my client base, hired employees, grew revenue, became the consultant companies trusted with their most sensitive systems, and one of those companies was Hartwell Industries, my father's company. The irony was almost too perfect. Sentinel Solutions started in a co-working space with me, a laptop, and Walter's angel investment. 3 years later, we had 15 employees and $5.2 million in annual revenue. Office in Pioneer Square with views of Elliott Bay. The kind of space that made clients take you seriously before you even opened your mouth. We specialized in cybersecurity consulting, data protection, cloud security audits, compliance review. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was profitable. And I was good at it. Our biggest client was Hartwell Industries. They'd signed a 5-year contract 3 years ago, worth about 45% of their security infrastructure. Without us, they were vulnerable. Data breaches, ransomware, compliance violations. In manufacturing and distribution, that kind of exposure could sink a company in months. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. All communications went through my COO, Alex Rivera, 38, former Amazon security lead, brilliant strategist. He handled the Hartwell account personally. Every call, every meeting, every contract negotiation. David Hartwell never knew his daughter was protecting him. I heard him praise us once. Industry conference in Bellevue. I wasn't there, but Jenna was. She sent me a video. David stood at a networking reception surrounded by executives. Sentinel Solutions has been transformative for us, he said. Confident. Proud. Whoever runs that company is a genius. Best cybersecurity team in the Pacific Northwest. A man next to him nodded. I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months. Very private operation. Do you know who's behind it? David shrugged. Never met them personally. Everything goes through their legal team and account managers. But honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering results. I watched that video 3 times. Then I deleted it. The business grew. We added clients, hired more engineers, moved to a bigger office. I wore Armani now, drove a Tesla, lived in a condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. Everything I had, I'd built myself. But there was a hole in my life that success couldn't fill. Grandma Eleanor died 2 years ago. Pneumonia. Quick. She was 68. I flew back to Bellevue for the funeral. Sat in the back pew of the church. Watched my father deliver a eulogy about a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to family. The irony was suffocating. He talked about her strength, her wisdom, her unwavering love for her family. He didn't mention how she'd called me every Sunday for 12 years, how she'd been the only one who saw me, how she'd argued with him until she had no words left. At the reception, no one noticed me. I kept to myself, left early. 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never heard of, Catherine Yu, estate attorney in downtown Seattle. Miss Hartwell, she said, I represent your grandmother's separate estate. She established a trust fund in your name 8 years ago with explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence. I nearly dropped my phone. How much? I whispered. $750,000. And there's a letter. Would you like me to read it? Yes. Catherine's voice softened. My dearest Maya, I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition, the broken promises, all of it. I argued with your father until I had no words left. He wouldn't listen. He never does. This money is yours. No strings. No conditions. Use it to build the life you deserve. The life they tried to take from you. Remember what I always told you. Don't let anyone say you're not worthy. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late for them. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma L. I sat in my office for an hour after that call, staring at the city, at the life I'd built, at the empire Eleanor never got to see. She'd known, the whole time. She'd known what David had done, and she'd been protecting me from beyond the grave. I used part of that money to expand Sentinel. New hires, better equipment, a second office in Portland. We grew 30% in 1 year. The rest I kept as insurance. 7 years of operating capital, enough to walk away from any client, any situation, any family that tried to control me. For a day I hoped would never come but always knew might. That day came 3 weeks ago. 6 weeks before the gala, I started noticing things. Small things. A black sedan that appeared too often outside my building. Same make, same model. Different license plates, but the same tinted windows. The same way it idled at the curb for 20 minutes before driving away. Hang-up calls to Sentinel's main line. 3, 4, 5 times a day. Someone would call, wait through the greeting, then disconnect. No voice, no message, just silence and a click. Then Jenna noticed. That car's been here 3 days in a row, she said, looking out my office window. October, rain streaked the glass. Gray Seattle sky pressing down. Black Lexus. Tinted windows. You see it, I saw it. Probably nothing, I said. Maya. She turned to face me. I've known you for 8 years. You don't do probably nothing. What's going on? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Not yet. But the feeling in my gut told me something was shifting. 2 days later, Alex knocked on my office door. He looked worried. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. About Hartwell. My pulse quickened. What about them? Their CFO called again. 4th time this month? They're pushing hard for a face-to-face meeting about the contract renewal. He sat down. They want to meet ownership. Not me. Not our legal team. The actual decision-makers. What did you tell them? Same thing I always tell them. Our ownership structure is private. All negotiations go through authorized representatives. He paused. But Maya, they're not backing down. Their contract is up for renewal in 6 months. They're desperate. Desperate. That was the word that scared me. Why desperate? I asked. Because without us, they're vulnerable. 45% of their security infrastructure. If we walk, they'd need at least 18 months to rebuild that protection. In this climate, with ransomware attacks up 300%, they can't afford to be exposed that long. I stared out the window. The black sedan was gone. For now, they're investigating us, I said quietly. Alex nodded. I think so. The questions they're asking aren't just about renewal terms. They're fishing, trying to find out who we are, what leverage they might have. And if they find out it's me, I don't know. But David Hartwell doesn't strike me as someone who handles surprises well. That was an understatement. I told Alex to stall. Be polite, professional, but give them nothing. That night I got a hang-up call on my personal cell. The number I gave to maybe 10 people. The number that wasn't listed anywhere public. I stared at the screen. Unknown caller, 3 rings, silence, click. Someone was getting close. I called Jenna. I need you to be honest with me, I said. Am I being paranoid about what I told her? The sedan, the calls, Hartwell's pressure, the timing. She was quiet for a long moment. You're not paranoid, she finally said. Someone's watching you. This isn't coincidence. You need to be careful. Careful how I don't know. But Maya, if they find out you own Sentinel, if your father finds out you're the one keeping his company alive? She trailed off. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? I had 2 choices. Renew the contract, stay hidden, keep the status quo. Let my father continue praising my work without knowing it was mine. Or walk away. Let Hartwell Industries crumble. Watch Brandon fail as CEO. Watch my father scramble to explain to his board why they'd lost their most critical security partner. I'd built Sentinel to be independent, to prove I didn't need them, to succeed on my own terms. But walking away meant consequences. 70 employees at Hartwell would lose their jobs. Good people who'd done nothing wrong except work for a man who couldn't see his own daughter's worth. Could I live with that? I didn't know. What I did know was that I was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of watching my father take credit for my work. Tired of being invisible in my own success story. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. The invitation arrived 3 days later. Gold embossed lettering on heavy cream cardstock. Expensive. Formal. The kind of invitation you couldn't ignore. David Hartwell requests the pleasure of your company at his Lifetime Achievement Award Gala, Bellevue Club, November 15th. Black tie. I stared at it for 3 days. Jenna said I was crazy to go. It's a trap. He's going to humiliate you in front of everyone. Walter said it was my choice. But ask yourself why you want to go. Closure, revenge, or something else. Alex said it was too risky. If they're investigating Sentinel, showing up puts you on their radar. But I kept thinking about Eleanor's letter. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late for them. Maybe it was time for them to see. I RSVP'd, yes. 2 days before the gala, I stand in my apartment looking at the emerald green dress hanging on my closet door. I bought it specifically for this night. The color reminds me of what my mother wore in that photograph I carried to Seattle 12 years ago. She told me once that green was the color of growth of life, pushing through concrete. Tonight I need that metaphor more than ever. I call Jenna. She arrives an hour later with Thai takeout and wine. We sit on my couch and she asks the question that's been hanging in the air for weeks. Are you really going to do this? I nod. The two letters are already sealed in envelopes on my kitchen counter, one personal, one professional. The termination notice for Sentinel Hartwell, and a letter to my father. Jenna reads the personal one aloud, her voice catching on the final paragraph. You taught me I was worthless. I built a company that proved you wrong. But the saddest part, Dad, is that you were standing in a room praising the very thing you said I could never create, and you didn't even know it was me. She sets the letter down. He's going to lose his mind. I know. Are you ready for that? I look at the envelopes, at the dress, at the life I've built in the reflection of my apartment windows, the city glittering below the evidence of everything I've accomplished without them. I've been ready for 12 years, I say. The next morning, I meet Alex at the Sentinel office. He's completed the internal audit of the Hartwell contract. The numbers confirm what I already know. If we walk away, Hartwell Industries will face a 45% vulnerability gap within 60 days. Are you certain about this? Alex asks. He reminds me that 70 Sentinel employees depend on Hartwell revenue for their salaries, health insurance, mortgages. I feel the weight of that responsibility, like a stone in my chest. But staying silent, continuing to prop up a man who publicly humiliated me, would be a betrayal of everything Grandma Eleanor taught me about self-worth. Send the termination letter Monday morning, I tell him. 30-day notice. Strategic repositioning. Professional, clean, no emotion. Alex nods slowly. You're sure? I'm sure. That afternoon I drive to the cemetery where Eleanor is buried. I sit on the grass beside her headstone and read aloud the letter she left in the trust fund envelope 2 years ago. Maya, you were never the problem. You were the solution they couldn't see. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And when the day comes that you have to choose between their approval and your freedom, choose freedom. I'll be watching and I'll be so proud. I fold the letter carefully and place it back in my purse. I'm choosing freedom, Grandma, I whisper. I hope you're right. The evening before the gala, I receive a text from an unknown number. We know who owns Sentinel. See you tomorrow. My hands shake as I read it. For a moment, I consider not going. But then I remember the look on my father's face at that family meeting 12 years ago, the casual dismissal, the certainty that I was disposable. I have to see this through. I delete the text power off my phone and go to bed early. Tomorrow night will change everything. The morning of the gala, I wake at 6 and go for a run along the waterfront. The city is still quiet, the sky, the color of steel. I let the cold air fill my lungs as I run past the piers and the ferry terminal. When I get home, I shower, dry my hair, and carefully apply my makeup. I slip into the emerald green dress and fasten the silver bracelet my mother gave me when I was 8. I look at myself in the mirror and see for the first time in a long time, not the invisible daughter, not the dropout, not the burden, but a woman who built something real, something valuable, something mine. I pick up the 2 envelopes from the kitchen counter and slide them into my clutch. Then I walk out the door, get into my car, and drive toward Bellevue, toward the gala, toward the moment I've been waiting for all my life. I arrive at the Bellevue Club at 7:15, 15 minutes late. I park my Tesla in the valet line and step out into the cool November air, pulling my coat tighter around the emerald green dress. Through the tall glass doors, I can see the ballroom already filled with guests, 300 people in designer suits and evening gowns, servers moving through the crowd with champagne. I take a breath, steady myself, and walk inside. The ballroom hums with conversation and laughter. A stage has been set up at the far end, with a podium and a massive screen displaying the Washington Business Association logo. I spot my father almost immediately standing near the front, surrounded by executives and board members, his hand resting on Patricia's back. Brandon is beside him, tall and confident in a tailored navy suit. I walk to the bar, order a glass of champagne, and find a spot near the back where I can watch without being seen. At 7:30, the lights dim, and a woman in a burgundy dress steps up to the podium. She introduces herself as the president of the Washington Business Association and begins her speech about David Hartwell's contributions to the regional economy over the past 30 years. I listen as she lists my father's achievements, his leadership, his innovation, his mentorship. The screen fills with photographs of him, shaking hands with governors, cutting ribbons at factory openings, receiving awards. Then she says, "And now I'd like to invite David Hartwell to the stage to accept this year's Lifetime Achievement Award." The room erupts in applause. He walks to the podium, shaking hands along the way, and stands behind the microphone with a broad smile. He thanks the association, his employees, his business partners. He talks about hard work, integrity, and family values. And then about 10 minutes into his speech, he says something that makes my blood run cold. I also want to take a moment to thank our cybersecurity partner, Sentinel Solutions. Over the past 3 years, they've been absolutely critical to our operations. Their expertise has saved us from countless threats, and I can honestly say that without them, Hartwell Industries wouldn't be where it is today. So to the team at Sentinel, wherever you are tonight, thank you. The crowd applauds. I feel the champagne glass trembling in my hand. I watch as my father continues oblivious talking about trust and partnership. I think about the 70 employees at Sentinel who depend on me, about the 5-year contract that will end in 30 days, about the termination letter sitting in my clutch. When he finishes, the crowd rises in a standing ovation. I stay seated. My father turns and scans the back of the room. His eyes land on me. For a moment, neither of us moves. Then he leans over to Patricia and whispers something. Her expression shifts from pride to confusion to something that looks almost like fear. He walks toward me, weaving through the crowd, and Patricia and Brandon follow. I stand, setting my champagne glass on a nearby table. When he reaches me, he doesn't smile. Maya, he says, his voice low. What are you doing here? I look at my father, at the man who told me I was a burden, who forced me to drop out of college, who stood on a stage tonight and praised a company he didn't know I built. I'm here because you invited me, I say quietly. Patricia steps forward, her voice sharp. This is a professional event, Maya. It's not appropriate for you to what, I interrupt. To exist. To take up space in a room where I'm not wanted, I pause. I've been doing that my whole life, Patricia. Tonight isn't any different. Brandon shifts uncomfortably. Maya, don't make a scene. Dad just received a major award. I reach into my clutch and pull out the 2 envelopes. I hold them up. This is a termination notice for the Sentinel Hartwell contract. 30 days. You'll receive it Monday morning. I tap the second envelope. And this is a letter from me to you. Personal. I hand both envelopes to my father, who takes them with confusion and rising anger. You're telling me you work for Sentinel, he asks. No, I say, my voice calm and clear. I don't work for Sentinel, Dad. I own it. I built it. I've been keeping your company safe for 3 years, and you didn't even know it was me. The silence that follows is absolute. Patricia's face goes pale. Brandon stares at me as if I've just spoken in a foreign language. You're lying, my father says, finally. Read the letters, I reply. You'll see I'm not. I turn and walk toward the exit, leaving my father holding the 2 envelopes in the middle of the ballroom. As I push through the glass doors and step out into the cold night air, I hear the murmur of voices rising behind me. I don't look back. I get into my Tesla, start the engine, and drive away from the Bellevue Club. And for the first time in 12 years, I feel completely, utterly free. I don't sleep the night of the gala. I drive back to my Seattle apartment in Silence Park in the underground garage and sit in my car for 20 minutes before I can bring myself to go inside. When I finally walk through my front door, I drop my clutch on the kitchen counter, kick off my heels, and stand at the window overlooking the city. The lights of downtown flicker in the distance. I watch them until the sky begins to turn gray with the first hint of dawn. At 8 in the morning, my phone rings. It's Jenna. I answer on the 3rd ring, my voice hoarse from not speaking. I saw the pictures, she says without preamble. Someone posted photos from the gala on LinkedIn. You walked out. Are you okay? I sit down on the couch, still wearing the emerald green dress. I told him, I say. I told him I owned Sentinel. I gave him the termination letter. And then I left. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Then Jenna says I'm coming over. She arrives 40 minutes later with coffee croissants and a determined expression. She sits beside me on the couch and listens as I recount the entire night. The speech, the confrontation, the look on my father's face when I revealed the truth. She doesn't interrupt. She just listens, nodding occasionally, her hand resting on my shoulder. Do you regret it? She asks finally. I think about the question. I think about the 70 employees at Sentinel who will be affected by the decision to terminate the Hartwell contract. I think about the years I spent building the company in secret, the quiet satisfaction of knowing my father relied on me without realizing it. And I think about the moment I walked out of the Bellevue Club, the cold air on my face, the weight lifting from my chest. No, I say, I don't regret it. But I'm scared of what happens next. She squeezes my shoulder. You're not alone in this. You know that, right? I nod, but I'm not sure I believe it yet. On Saturday afternoon, Walter calls. He's heard about the gala from Alex, who called him in a panic after seeing the LinkedIn photos. Walter asks me to meet him for lunch at a small Vietnamese restaurant in the International District. When I arrive, Walter is already seated at a corner table, a pot of jasmine tea in front of him. "Sit," he says, pouring me a cup of tea. "Tell me what you need." I sit and wrap my hands around the warm teacup. "I need to know if I made the right decision," I say. "I need to know if walking away from Hartwell was worth it, or if I just destroyed everything I built." Walter leans back in his chair and studies me for a moment. "When I left Microsoft 20 years ago, he says I had people telling me I was throwing away my career. They said I was making a mistake, that I'd regret it. But I knew that staying would have cost me more than leaving ever could." He pauses. "You didn't destroy anything, Maya. You protected yourself. That's not the same thing." I feel something loosen in my chest. "But what about the employees? What about the revenue loss?" "You'll rebuild," Walter says simply. "You've done it before. You'll do it again. And this time, you'll do it without carrying your father's weight." That night, I sit at my kitchen table and open my laptop. I draft an email to Alex with instructions for Monday morning, send the termination letter at 9 a.m. sharp schedule, an all-hands meeting with the Sentinel team for Tuesday, and begin outreach to 3 potential new clients. Walter. Recommended months ago. I read the email twice, make a few edits, and then hit send. On Sunday morning, I wake up and realize I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. I make coffee, sit by the window, and watch the city come to life. My phone buzzes with a text from Jenna Brunch. My treat. I smile and type back, "Yes, I'll be there in an hour." As I get dressed, I catch my reflection in the mirror. I look tired, but I also look like someone who has finally stopped running. I think about Eleanor's letter, "Choose freedom," and realize that for the first time in my life I have. At 9 o'clock on Monday morning, Alex Rivera sends the termination email to Hartwell Industries. The subject line reads, "Notice of Contract Termination, Sentinel Solutions." The email is addressed to David Hartwell, the CFO, and the COO. It is professional, clean, and final. 30 days notice citing strategic repositioning and a shift in Sentinel's client focus. No emotion, no explanation beyond what is legally required. I sit in my office at Sentinel's Pioneer Square headquarters and watch the clock. 9:01, 9:02. I imagine the email landing in David Hartwell's inbox. I imagine him opening it, reading the first line, and realizing his daughter wasn't bluffing. I imagine the moment he understands that the company he praised on stage, the company that has been protecting 45% of Hartwell Industries' cybersecurity infrastructure for 3 years, is about to walk away. At 9:15, my phone rings. Unknown number. I don't answer. The call goes to voicemail. 2 minutes later, the phone rings again. Same number. I decline the call. At 9:30, Alex knocks on my office door. "They're calling," he says. "Hartwell's CFO, the COO, and someone from their legal team. They want an emergency meeting. Today, if possible." I shake my head. "Tell them we're unavailable this week. Refer them to Catherine Yu if they have legal questions about the termination clause." Alex nods and leaves. I exhale slowly, my hands gripping the edge of my desk. At 10 o'clock, Jenna texts, "How's it going?" I reply, "Letter sent." Phone blowing up. Holding the line. At 11:30, I receive an email directly from David Hartwell. The subject line is blank. The message reads, "Maya, we need to talk. This is not the way to handle a business disagreement. Call me immediately." I read the email 3 times. I note the word disagreement, as if the termination of a 5-year contract is merely a misunderstanding between colleagues. I note the command, "Call me immediately," as if I'm still the daughter who must obey. I don't reply. Instead, I forward the email to Catherine Yu with a note, "For the record." At 1 in the afternoon, Alex returns to my office with an update. "Hartwell's team is panicking," he says. "They're asking if we can extend the termination window from 30 days to 90 days. They're offering a 20% rate increase if we stay." "No," I say without hesitation. "They're also asking who owns Sentinel," Alex continues. "The CFO keeps saying, 'We need to speak to the owner directly.' I told them ownership information is confidential." I nod. "Good. Keep it that way." At 3 o'clock, my phone rings again. This time it's Brandon. I stare at my brother's name on the screen for a long moment, then decline the call. A minute later, a text arrives. "Maya, please. Dad is losing his mind. Just talk to him." I delete the text without replying. At 5 o'clock, I leave the office and drive home. My phone has 17 missed calls, 9 voicemails, and 12 unread emails. I turn off my phone, pour myself a glass of wine, and sit by the window. Outside, the city is alive with rush hour traffic and the glow of streetlights. Inside, I feel something I haven't felt in years, the quiet certainty that I made the right choice. Tomorrow, my father will come to Sentinel. I know this, and when he does, I'll be ready. David Hartwell arrives at Sentinel Solutions at 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. I watch from my second-floor office window as a black Mercedes pulls up to the curb and my father steps out dressed in a charcoal suit and tie. He looks up at the building, a modern glass structure in Pioneer Square, with the Sentinel logo etched into the entrance, and for a moment he just stands there staring. My assistant buzzes my desk. "There's a David Hartwell here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." "Send him up," I say. 2 minutes later, my office door opens and David walks in. He closes the door behind him and stands in the center of the room, looking around at the diplomas on the wall, the framed photograph of Eleanor on the bookshelf, the view of Elliott Bay through the window. He doesn't sit down. "This is really yours," he says finally. "It's not a question." "Yes," I reply. I stay seated behind my desk, my hands folded in front of me. He shakes his head slowly. "How long have you been running this company?" 8 years, I say. "I started it with $2,000 and a laptop. Walter Chen gave me my first investment. Jenna Park was my first hire. And 3 years ago, your CFO signed a contract with us because Sentinel had the best cybersecurity audits in the region. And you didn't think to tell me," his voice rises. "You didn't think your own father deserved to know that his daughter was, what I interrupt, was capable, was successful, was valuable." I stand now, meeting his eyes. "You told me I was worthless, Dad. You told me I didn't have what it takes. You made me drop out of college so Brandon could go to Stanford. Why would I tell you anything?" His jaw tightens. "That was a family decision. We needed to prioritize, you needed to prioritize, Brandon," I say. "You always did, and I spent 12 years proving you wrong. I built this company. I employed 15 people. I kept your operations safe. And you stood on a stage and thanked me without even knowing it was me." He looks at me for a long moment. "If you wanted recognition, you should have asked for it." "You didn't have to. I didn't want recognition from you," I say quietly. "I wanted to stop needing it." The silence that follows is heavy. He glances at the photograph of Eleanor on the bookshelf. "Your grandmother would have been proud of you," he says finally. His voice is softer now, almost uncertain. "She was," I reply. "She left me a trust fund and a letter. She told me to choose freedom. That's what I'm doing." He exhales slowly. "The termination stands, yes. Even if it costs my company millions, even if it forces me to lay off employees, I feel the guilt rise in my chest. I think about the 70 people at Hartwell who will lose their jobs, but I don't look away. You had 3 years to treat me like I mattered," I say. "You chose not to. I'm not responsible for fixing the consequences of that choice." He nods, once his expression unreadable. "I didn't come here to apologize," he says. "I know," I reply. "And I didn't invite you here to forgive you." He turns and walks to the door. He pauses with his hand on the handle. "You're more like me than you think," he says. I don't respond. I watch as my father leaves my office, walks down the stairs and gets back into his Mercedes. I watch until the car disappears around the corner. Then I sit down at my desk, open my laptop, and get back to work. 3 weeks after the confrontation at Sentinel, the consequences begin to ripple outward. I hear about them first through LinkedIn, then through industry contacts, and finally through a phone call from Uncle Thomas, the only member of my father's family who has ever treated me with kindness. "I thought you should know," Thomas says when I answer. "David announced layoffs this morning. 70 employees, 22% of the workforce. He's blaming it on rising operational costs and cybersecurity vulnerabilities." I sit down slowly. I knew this was coming. I knew the moment I handed my father the termination letter that Hartwell Industries would struggle to replace Sentinel's infrastructure in time, but hearing the number makes it real. 70 people, 70 families, 70 mortgages and car payments and college tuitions. Is he telling them the truth, I ask? Is he telling them why Thomas is quiet for a moment? He's telling them the company is restructuring. He's not mentioning Sentinel, and he's definitely not mentioning you. I close my eyes. I think about the employees at Hartwell people. I've never met people who have nothing to do with the years of humiliation and neglect I endured. I think about the guilt that has been sitting in my chest since the gala, the weight of knowing that my freedom came at a cost I didn't choose but can't ignore, Thank you for telling me, I say. Are you okay? Thomas asks. I don't know, I admit. I don't know if I'll ever be okay with this part. That afternoon, I call an all-hands meeting at Sentinel. I stand in front of my 15 employees, engineers, analysts, project managers, people who have trusted my leadership for years, and tell them the truth. I tell them about Hartwell Industries, about the termination, about the layoffs. I tell them that Sentinel will lose 40% of its annual revenue, but that I have already secured meetings with 3 new clients. I tell them that no one at Sentinel will lose their job, that I will take a pay cut before I let that happen. I made a choice, I say, and that choice had consequences I didn't want but knew were possible. I'm not asking you to carry the weight of that, but I am asking you to trust me while we rebuild. The room is silent for a moment. Then Jenna Park stands up. We're with you, she says simply, and one by one the rest of the team nods. After the meeting, Alex Rivera pulls me aside. I got a call from Hartwell's COO this morning, he says. He wanted to know if Sentinel would consider a short-term consulting contract to help them transition to a new provider. He said they'd pay double our usual rate. I shake my head. No. Are you sure? Alex asks. It would help us offset the revenue loss. I'm sure, I say. We're not going back. Not even for money. That evening I sit in Dr. Sarah Mitchell's office for my weekly therapy session. I've been seeing Dr. Mitchell for 6 months now, working through the layers of family trauma and self-worth issues that kept me hidden for so long. I feel guilty, I say. I know I shouldn't. I know I made the right choice. But 70 people lost their jobs because of me. Dr. Mitchell leans forward. 70 people lost their jobs because your father didn't plan for the possibility that his cybersecurity partner might leave. That's not your responsibility, Maya. You're not obligated to sacrifice yourself to protect him from the consequences of his own decisions. I nod, but the guilt doesn't disappear. I know it will take time, maybe years, before I can hold my freedom and my grief in the same hand, without feeling like I have to choose one over the other. Healing isn't linear, Doctor, Mitchell says gently. You're allowed to feel complicated things about this. I exhale slowly. I just want to stop feeling like I owe him something. You will, Dr. Mitchell says, but it starts with forgiving yourself first. 6 months after the gala, my life looks different. Sentinel Solutions has signed contracts with 3 new clients, a healthcare network in Portland, a fintech startup in San Francisco, and a regional bank in Denver. The company's revenue has stabilized at $4.8 million annually, down from $5.2 million, but climbing steadily. I've hired 4 new employees, including 2 junior analysts and a client relations manager. The office feels alive again, filled with the hum of collaborative work and the quiet confidence of a team that survived a crisis together. I look different too. I've cut my hair shorter just above my shoulders, and I've started running again early mornings along the waterfront, the same route I took the day of the gala. I've continued my weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Sarah Mitchell, and slowly the guilt about the Hartwell layoffs has softened into something I can carry without it crushing me. I understand now that I can hold 2 truths at the same time, that I made the right choice for myself and that other people were hurt in the process. Both things can be true. On a Saturday afternoon in May, I meet Jenna and Walter at a cafe in Fremont. Walter brings news. One of his former colleagues at Microsoft is launching a new venture and wants Sentinel to lead the cybersecurity build. It's a 2-year contract worth $1.5 million. I review the proposal over coffee and realize that Sentinel is no longer recovering, it's growing. You did it, Walter says, smiling. You rebuilt. I nod. We did it, I correct. I couldn't have done this without you. Either of you. Jenna reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. Found family, she says. It's become our shorthand for the life we've built together, the one that doesn't depend on blood or obligation but on choice and mutual respect. That evening I receive a text from an unknown number. I open it cautiously. The message reads, Maya, this is Brandon. I know we haven't spoken since the gala. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you years ago. I didn't. That was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it. I read the message 3 times. I think about my brother, about the years he spent as the golden child while I was invisible. I think about the family meeting where he said nothing about the gala, where he told me not to make a scene. And I think about the fact that he's reaching out now 6 months later when the dust has settled and the consequences are clear. I type back, thank you for saying that. I'm not ready to talk yet, but maybe someday. I hit send, then set my phone down. Outside my window, the sun is setting over Puget Sound, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I watch the light shift and change, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong to myself. Not to my family, not to their expectations, just to myself. And that, I think, is enough. So that's my story. That's how I went from being the invisible daughter, the one who wasn't good enough, smart enough, or valuable enough, to the woman sitting here today running a company I built with my own hands, surrounded by people who chose to stand beside me. I'm not going to tell you that everything is perfect now. It's not. There are still days when I wake up and feel the weight of those 70 layoffs, wondering if I could have done things differently. There are still moments when I see my father's number flash on my phone and feel that old instinct to answer, to explain myself, to try one more time to earn his approval. But those moments are getting rarer. And when they come, I remind myself of what my grandmother Eleanor wrote in that letter: choose freedom. Freedom doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop feeling guilty or sad or angry. Freedom means you stop letting other people's opinions define your worth. It means you build a life that belongs to you, even if it costs you relationships you thought you needed. It means you learn to carry your complicated feelings without letting them bury you. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have a family that makes you feel small, if you've been told you're not enough, if you've spent years trying to prove your value to people who refuse to see it, I want you to know something. You don't owe them your life. You don't owe them your dreams. You don't owe them endless chances to hurt you while you wait for them to change. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to build something new. You are allowed to choose people who see your value without you having to perform for it. That's not selfish. That's survival. And if you're carrying guilt about the consequences of choosing yourself, if you're worried about who gets hurt when you set boundaries, if you're afraid of being the villain in someone else's story, let me tell you what. My therapist told me, you are not responsible for protecting people from the natural consequences of their own actions. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel strong and certain. Other days, you'll doubt everything. That's okay. That's human. What matters is that you keep moving forward, that you keep choosing yourself, even when it's hard. 3 weeks ago, I stood in a ballroom and told my father the truth. I walked out of that room and into a life I built on my own terms. It wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. But it was mine. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with today. Your life can be yours too. You just have to choose it. Thank you for listening. And if this story resonated with you, I hope it gives you the courage to write your own ending, one where you finally choose freedom.